Sabi.
Sabi? Okay. Hi, I am back, Duchess Antigone, and I'm teaching the lane and quadrant theory introduction class. And I have Sabi here, who is going to take my class, and then Duke's Fen is in the back there with Bowser, kind of watching and auditing to make sure I don't say anything bad. Well, not bad, but wrong. Hopefully not. I've taught this class a bunch. This is pretty standard from foam fighting. We developed this in foam fighting. By we, I mean Sven behind me and our household in foam fighting, fighting group called the Rogue Company. So all of this was developed there, and I learned it there, and then we transferred it over to the SCA because it transfers 100%, funny enough. Now, I'm not going to say we are necessarily created it, as you can very much go to Dark Yard, which is Branos and Rombalder, and they also teach this in a little bit different way. They also have really cool diagrams, which I can't draw, so maybe that'll be helpful to you. But it's very, very similar, almost exactly the same concept. This is going to be very much rudimentary, simply because it's introduction. If I can find my class notes. Maybe, maybe not. Sorry. I promise I was prepared. At some point, I was prepared. All right, so quadrant theory. When we're talking about quadrants, and I'm going to use foam sorts for this because it's a little bit easier so we don't hit each other. I'll show you what a quadrant is. So quadrant, quad, four, makes sense, right? The name there. So when we're looking at our body, we are looking at our body. Our body is about here-ish for me, and then here. So we're going to create kind of this little horizontal and vertical line in your body. This should be exactly in the center, and this may drift a little bit depending upon what game you're playing, the rules are, and how tall you are. So for me, mine is up a little bit higher, whereas other people might be a little bit lower, simply because my torso is kind of short. Of course it is, right? Just like the rest of me. But anyway, so we have quadrants. So when we have our quadrants like this, we have four of them. The right, top, left, top, right, bottom, left, bottom. So you think to yourself, well, that makes complete sense, right? That seems like a very, why is that important? And that's important because as we teach and as we do things, we often refer to quadrants. And it's very important to have the same language and the same thought process. The other thing is when we're teaching, we have to visualize. So I have to be able to visualize, as does my student. I'm talking about, oh, your right upper quadrant. He's like, okay, well, when you do right upper quadrant, so I left upper quadrant. So now immediately, he's having to visualize exactly what I'm talking about because we're facing each other, so forth and so on. So when you can visualize what your body is doing in quadrants and what your opponent's body is doing in quadrants, then that is the basis of how we determine a lot of lanes of attack. So how does quadrant theory really help us? Well, so quadrant theory helps us in that if my opponent is throwing up top up here, then he's throwing into this quadrant, and I know this part right here, this quadrant, is what I need to block. So I'm going to need to block this quadrant. Sorry, my sticks are a little funky, right? So if my opponent has crossed my vertical here, threshold, over this side, I know he's going to be on this side, and if he's up high, he's going to be in this quadrant. So I know this part of the quadrant is what I need to worry about as far as movements. Same thing with bottom, right, and left. So immediately, when my opponent throws at me, I can determine if he's throwing high, so it's up here. So I don't have to worry about any of these other three quadrants. I can focus on this quadrant. So that immediately takes a lot of the thought process that you have to have while you're fighting out of your fighting. When you look at high-end fighters, you say, man, that guy, super fast. What do you think? Super fast. Man, I wish I could be that fast. I hate to tell you this, but they're not any faster than me, probably. What has happened is that they don't have to think in order to fight. They just go. Or they read so fast that they don't have to stop, process it. The body knows what to do. And how we do this is starting off with quadrant theory. I immediately, now my brain is able to say, hey, if he's throwing over here, I don't have to worry about this. I only have to worry about this, so I'm only concerned about this. So if I'm only concerned about this over here, that eliminates so many possibilities I'm having to run through my brain of where is the shot going to be? Which way do I need to move my body? Which way do I need to move my head? So same thing here, right? So if he fakes here, he's faking here, and he goes left, I'm like, okay, he's over here. I know this quadrant, right? He could kind of shift to anything over here. The likelihood of him shifting to this quadrant down here, super low. So now we start playing if-then scenarios and risk assessment in our minds as the fight is going. So this is where you start in your brain saying, oh, that's how you get a fight computer. This is the introduction. As soon as you start applying that quadrant theory, you now, in your brain, as you're fighting, you're thinking a whole lot more. At the beginning, you're going to slow down, you're going to be terrible, and you're going to be like, this sucks. Why am I doing this? I should just randomly throw. The problem is, if you keep randomly throwing, you're never really going to get any better, and you're not going to make that next leap in your plateau. You will plateau, and it's going to be because of this. Once you take the time to learn this, work on it, and get it in your mind, then you're going to be able to overcome that plateau. So, quadrant theory is super, super basic, super important. And it's the basis of the next thing, which is lanes of attack, which is way more complicated. So, what we talk about tone of defense and lanes of attack. And what that means is that by using our quadrant theory here, now I have, okay, so when he throws across this way, right, I blocked here, right? Now, there is a way from his point A of his shoulder to point B of his sword coming at me. There's a way that his sword just travels. So put it back down, and then again. So you see that? There's a lane in which his sword travels. That's what we call a lane. And this is an attack lane because he is attacking. So I know in that attack lane exactly where it's going to go. That determines for me where does this need to be in that quadrant. So immediately when he moves, I was like, this quadrant, this hand is going to have to block. And then as I see his arm go, I know exactly where the lane is and where in that quadrant I need to place my defense. So quadrant theory, great, right? Introduction, and then lane theory. Well, that's very complex. You could change that any time. In heavy fighting, it is much harder to do than in rapier fighting. Rapier fighting, if you're using this, by the way, if you're using attack lanes in rapier fighting, they can change mid-throw the lane. And so it becomes a lot more complex and a lot harder to run. But heavy fighting, we don't typically have that. There's a couple people that can do that very well. We don't see that as much. So when we're talking about our lanes of attack, we start getting into, okay, there are permanent lanes of attack. So because of his size and the way he throws, and the way he has trained himself to throw shots, he has only a limited number of lanes of attack. The more experienced of a fighter you are, the longer you fight, the better fighter you are, the more your lanes are going to open up, the more you're going to change them, and you're not going to rely on the same ones. So for him, I only have to worry about this pretty much 50%, maybe more of the time if that's the shot, depending upon how much he throws it. So when he throws over here, I block here, and now he is in this position, I'm in this position. So from here, the question is, okay, what is the easiest way to throw and then also block at the same time? Protect myself. What's the least risky, right? And so the least risky for me is here, is to straight to throw right back into it, right? Because when I'm throwing right back into it, I'm covering my face, covering my body, and assuming I have a shield, it'll be over here. So that is how I read the lane. This is very easy, and that's the reason why a lot of heavy fighting, you fight shield right-handed, you see people doing this back and forth, and eventually somebody will throw something else. But that's because this is the safest and a primary easy lane of attack. Now, from there, we can start working on multiple lanes. This is the first one most people learn because right-handed sword and shield. The other one that we teach more often than not to a new person is your flat snap. So if I'm throwing a flat snap, which is right there, exactly. So that follows a specific lane every time. And I can almost guarantee you he's going to throw that shot the exact same lane within an inch or two every time he throws it. Because that's what he's conditioned his muscle memory to do. So now I know, okay, I only have to worry about this section of my defense. I don't really have to worry about anything else when it comes to it. So as soon as he starts throwing his flat snap, I know to block over here. misses the lane. Now that his lane's here, that's his attack lane. Me throwing back into the lane, it's like, okay, well, do I throw here? No, not necessarily. He can easily, he's like blocking me, right? So throwing right back into that isn't going to earn me anything. So I'm probably not going to do that. A lot of people still will, thinking they can maybe, if he pulls back open, opens his shield, I can go into that because it is, again, super safe. So if he's throwing a flat shot, I'm blocking my shield, I'm going to be either over here or potentially over there or slot shot. So we're talking about lanes of attack. The lane of attack is what is coming from either you to your opponent or your opponent to you. When we talk about cone of defense, that is the defense of my body, right? So my body takes up a certain amount of space, as does yours. Now, this is where being small is a small advantage, small advantage. Ah, fun, so funny. Oh, and then my cone of defense that I have to defend is smaller than his. Because he's taller, he's bigger. So for him, he's going to have a lot more to be able to read and move around to defend. For me, I don't have as much. I have to worry more about my lanes of attack. So for that, what we're going to do is I want you to do something very interesting, which is we are going to show you what some of the more mid to high-end fighters do to utilize lanes of attack in quadrant theory against you, who is defending it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw up here, right? So this is my upper right quadrant, his upper left quadrant, right? Now, very easy. If I keep it up here, very easy for him to block. But what's not easy for him to block is if I came down. So now he's immediately going to have to follow me down. So changing which quadrant, not just up and down, but also from this quadrant to this quadrant, being able to change from here to there, and do it in a different sequence every time, is one of the things that you will find a lot of the higher end fighters are able to do. When you're watching fighting, you see somebody just fight window wipers, they're not changing those lanes of attack. They're staying in just one or two lane of attack, and your person who's defending, if the onus is on them to be able to defend. Most of which people, if they're been around or they fight a lot, they will do. And that's the reason why you will find people that you fight them, you're just like, man, this fight takes forever. I can't kill them. You guys, you're throwing the same shot, and they know it, and they're blocking the same shot. So you need to do something different. You need to change it up. And that's where these lanes of attack kind of come into play. And we teach primary, secondary, tertiary. Your secondary can be 2 spots in the quadrant. Your tertiary can be 2 spots in the quadrant, depending upon where your body is and what you're throwing. So for every attack that I throw, the return from my opponent, there is a primary, a secondary, and a tertiary place they can throw. The primary is going to be the easiest for them to, fastest, easiest way for them to hit you wherever. It's also going to be the one that is the least risky if I return. So if he throws into my guard, cross is super fast, super easy to my arm. Let's say I cross over here to my arm. Of course, that's going to be a very fast primary return. It's also no risk to him. However, if I throw here and he decides, oh, I'm going to hit you in the leg, right? So, yeah, exactly. So this is like a tertiary return where he is completely going to be exposed. I can do all kinds of fun stuff, right? It's very risky. So that's when we talk about your primary, your secondary, and your tertiary. Secondary would be something that is along the same quadrant, either it being horizontal or vertical. That would be considered usually secondary. And the reason why is because it's a little bit less safe, but it's also enough of a difference that you have a higher chance of hitting them, but your risk is higher. So when we look at which one is it, it's a risk and reward. Is my risk worth the reward or not? And that is something you will see a lot of the high-end fighters immediately can read, see, and do during the fight. So there's a whole other facet of combat that a lot of people do not ever get exposed to or understand. And this is very technical in the brain and mental. We have a lot of fighters who like to fight by instinct, and that's totally fine, and there's some great instinct fighters. If you aren't one of them, then this is definitely something you need to investigate, work on, learn. If you are an instinct fighter and you want to be more technical, I highly suggest working on this theory. I have a whole bunch of handouts that have some great body movements and everything else for you. Most of this is an introduction. And then, let's see, I'm going to check my thing. Yep, quadrant theory. Oh, yeah, 1 page. So, the next thing I'm going to show you is drills. How do we do drills for this? Because, of course, it wouldn't be a lot of fun if we didn't have drills. Maybe. Single sword. So the first drill we teach for this to help you understand it, because I can tell you what it is, and you can, in your brain, you might be able to figure it out and be fine. Not everybody can do that. In fact, most people do. And being able to then utilize it and put it into action is incredibly rare unless you practice it, train it. And the other thing is you need it in your muscle memory so that you're not having to stand here and think. So a lot of times when I'm fighting, I'm standing there and you're like, why is she standing there? Why aren't you doing anything? It's like, because my brain is literally like, I'm thinking about what to do, which can be a problem. Don't do that in tournaments. So I'm going to show you block strike. Here we go. So we use padded foam swords. The reason why we do this is because to get hit this much with rattan is incredibly painful. And pain isn't the best teacher, it comes to find out. Funny that. So we use padded sticks. This also allows you to read faster. It also allows you to do more repetitions because they don't weigh as much. So you're not going to, you will get very tired of doing this, but you're not going to get as tired as if we try to do it. So we're going to back it up. So how do we do block strike? I see it right here in front of me. So when we do block strike, you can't really see it, but his feet are very linear, so I'm going to fix that real quick. So I want you to stand normal. It's perfect, right? And then what we want to do is we're going to take our sword and make sure that it is at least apart. So basically from me to him. If you are short and your person is a lot taller and they put the sword down and they're like, haha, you cannot touch them, they are too far away, they need to come a little bit closer. You do not want to be too close. If you are too close, you cannot read fast enough. You will not learn, you will not be able to block anything. It's a mess. So you need to be at least this far apart. So I'm going to start with my left hand because my right one is unfortunately uneven. So what we're going to do is, this is called a block strike. So really strike block, we call it block strike. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pick two locations via the quadrants to throw. I am not going to cross, because that is incredibly hard to read. So as we're learning this, we're only going to pick two that are either up here, down here. Typically, we start off with the newer fighters, this upper left and this upper right. So you can strike at the upper left or the upper right. Okay? And anywhere in that quadrant. What's going to happen is I will start with the low, I will throw, he's going to attempt to block, and then he's going to throw out of that. Right? And so now I'm going to throw, attempt to block, and then he's going to throw. There are no fakes. There are no feints. You start off very slow until you get a rhythm, and then once you get a rhythm, then you can start going faster and faster and faster. Do not hit each other in the head. If you're hitting each other in the head, go put your heavy helmets on, and then do this drill. We don't want anybody to get their eyes hurt, nose busted, broken, or your contact flipped out of your eye, or anything else to happen to your face. We want to have pretty faces. Well, I do. So, I'm going to throw, he's going to block, throw, block. You got to fully throw. You're trying to hit me.
I'm trying to, my aim is to throw the head.
You got to bring it down. There you go. So the other thing is, like, when you're starting as a heavy fighter, you want to have your hand way up here like you're heavy fighting. It's okay in this instance. You will bring your hand down closer to more of your chest, rib cage area. And the whole reason is because none of our shots are going to be to the head right now. Once you get better at this, and we do hats and bats, which is a little bit different, then we start incorporating the head. But primarily, we want to work on our quadrants here and not the head as much. So here. Yep. And this drill is also the reason why so many of us that transfer over from foam fighting who know this drill or do this drill, heavy fighters who do this drill, can arm you, so much. Because we train that. So you start left-handed and they're right-handed. One person switches, this person stays the same. do it for 60 seconds, switch, 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 until he has done left-handed, right-handed twice, and I have done left-handed, right-handed twice. We'll hand match, and then we'll be offside, hand match, and then offside again. So why do we do all the hands? Because we do a lot of two-sword, but also because you need to be able to be proficient in either hand, at least competent enough in your offhand. So if you get armed, or you get injured, or any other reason, you have to fight with your other hand, you can. To not work both hands equally is not a good idea. It's just not. So this drill will make it so where your left hand has to work, same as your right hand. A lot of times we make your dominant hand actually work less than your offhand, until your offhand is at least equal to, or it's always going to be a little subpar, your offhand, because you're not dominant in that way. You don't deal with everything. But eventually, your left hand is not going to be stupid. But it'll be real stupid at first, and that means you got to work even harder. So that's the first drill we teach. The next drill we teach is block, attack, block. So in this one, we incorporate. So and what that teaches right there is, as you can see primary and primary, and I would for secondary, and how that return happens. And eventually, you narrow your movements enough that you can throw with efficiency, and you can block with efficiency, and then throw out of it with efficiency. And you will mentally know, hey, if I throw here, how do I need to come out of that throw to block in order to not get my face beat? So the next drill, block, attack, block. So it's going to take a half step back for me. And we're going to do these in little bitty steps because I'm on camera. Little bitty steps. So what he's going to do is he is going to do step forward and attack. I'm going to block. I'm going to step forward and attack. He's going to block, and then he's going to attack like that. So it's a 3-part movement. One person's blocking twice. One person is attacking once or twice. Once. Block, attack, block. You got that, right? So one person's doing attack, block, attack. The other person's doing block, attack. I'll get it right eventually. But in doing that, you're now incorporating not just standing here, but also in the movement back and forth, and then adding onto it, not just what's my throw in here, but also what's my follow-up. And it gives you a 3-part combination to train. So you can use that as just training for your range of attack, or if there's specifically like, I want to get way better at the top game, I'll work a lot of that and just do a lot of the top so I can read and work it and be repetitive. Next one. I don't like this. So when we talk about lanes of attack and quadrant theory, a lot of people, we're going to talk about stance a little bit, which not everybody agrees with this, and that's quite all right. And this will be different in the fencing community than it is in the heavy community. And the reason why in the fencing community you don't have cuts, except for in CNT. So this would transfer to CNT. But in the fencing community, they're very stabby, obviously. And so you don't have the cuts, you don't have to worry about those angles of attack. It's different, right? So, what was I going to say? Oh my gosh, lost the line. Stance, sorry. Okay, stance. So, the bell in the background is like drawing me, is what's going on. It's like the song of my people. So stance. So while we're standing, go ahead, step up, show me your stance. What is your stance? Right? So my stance is very much, this is what I would be like.
Basic on-store A-frame.
Basic on-store A-frame, also block. So with this, there's a couple of problems. You have to be very static. You can't move exactly. Your hips are locked, and your shoulders are also, the rotation is going to affect your knees. So if you're static fighting, perfectly fine, right? If you're not static fighting, it's an issue. And that's the reason why I had to bring your foot forward, is so that you can reach fully. So what I want you to do is get back in that seat. Right? Okay, so in order to go this way, you have to right, you have to do that. I want you to turn it. Yeah, so as you can see, his whole body just locked up, and his whole filter and all of his weight's on this leg right here. So I can tell you right now, that will not have enough power to hit me hard enough to be a call. Even me, and I don't take very light. I take super light. So what we're going to do is we're going to move his foot right there. And this is a very open, wide stance. A lot of people are like, yes, but he's wide open. Yes, that's the reason why you do quadrant theory, lane of attacks, and everything else. is so that you know how to cover your body and understand where you're open and when you're not open. So from that, I want you to now from the same side. So are you having to twist, or is your weight getting weird? Or?
I'm more balanced.
You're more balanced, okay. So if we're more balanced here, then after he throws his shot, instead of being over here, he would have to correct himself out of that. So from here, when you throw that shot, you don't have to correct yourself, right? You can step right over. So that's the reason why when we start talking about all these things, you have to be very cognizant of your starting stance and how you move in and out of it. And so if you are going to fight in a static like that, you have to understand that your lanes of attack and the amount you can defend is limited by the amount that you can turn and move, and then your feet won't be able to move. So keep that in mind if you decide to stay in that stance. If you want to do a wider stance, it opens up a little bit more. And that's what we think is a wider stance. So, questions? I have no questions. So I have a handout so you can take it with you, and then we do have the drills all written out. And of course, you watch the video over and over. At any point in time, you're like, I need more of this, or you want, hey, I need one-on-one time with this. So a lot of this work requires one-on-one time. Teaching it in a class is just introducing you to the theory, and then start executing that theory in your fight or in practice. That's when you're going to need somebody to help you who understands it, and that's where the real work begins. Unfortunately, a lot of this you have to be able to do with a partner. So that is the kind of downside. You kind of can't do it by yourself. That being said, there is one way to do it by yourself. And it's not the best, but it will work for you if you're by yourself. And that is, we take our pillow over here, this lovely thing, and what we're going to do is, when we first start out, we propel the same way, vertically and horizontally, where the average person is right? The average person is about this tall. Then with symmetry bags, they are average height, spring, and the average person is here. So we'll mark it on this. This one isn't marked. Most of our other ones are. So we mark it here with this and this. And then we'll start rappelling it. We'll say, okay, here, rappelling drill. And it's a 1 through 4 rappelling drill. 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, 4. So what that teaches me is where my quadrants are and how to throw to each and every single one of them. Starting off in this quadrant. Here, I'll go 2, 1, 2, 2, 3, 4. That teaches me how to throw from here. Come back. Where's my next shot? Let's go. Where is that lane quadrant? You do your 3s and your 4s. So when you're first starting it, doing it only 4 is going to be better for you. It's less tiring. And you're going to learn more from it. Once you're able to do this with both hands, I'm sure Sven will tell you probably 500 shots per hand is probably what he expects. I know some of you are like, oh my god, that's so many. But what I just went through, if you do it with both hands, it's actually not, 500 isn't that many. And if you were doing the form correctly, it's not that bad. So first I'll start here, and 1 through 4 is my right. Then I'll do my left, 1 through 4. Of course, I'm taking 5-minute breaks in between. Don't try to do it all at once. I mean, do one thing once, sit down, and do the next one. So, right, left. Now, the next thing I'll do for my next one is do a reverse. Because, of course, we don't always throw this way. So then I'll do it the next one. Right, left. So, that full, right, left, right, left is what is called one cycle. That is one cycle clockwise, one cycle counterclockwise, both hands. Typically, we do at least one cycle per hand. We do at least one cycle to warm up before we do any of our private practices. And that is to get your brain in the idea of, okay, this is how I correct my mechanic real quick, and you are good to go. It's also why you see we bring a lot of pedals, and we also do a lot of offside work with each other before we fight. And that's why, so we can kind of center ourselves and make sure we're good to go. So that's 4. Once you kind of doing that good, you're solid, you're like, this is easy, I got this. Then we split it up into what is called 6. So that's where you see most of our training videos. We'll have 6. There'll be here, and of course, there's the vertical one. So this becomes 1, this becomes 2, this becomes 3, for you. And that is where you will end up being, is actually in 6 sections rather than 4. 4 is beginner. So from there, it's the same exact cycle. 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, 4, 1, 5, 1, 6. And so right hand, left hand, right hand, left hand, one cycle. So as you can imagine, once you get to 6, it's actually not that hard to get to 500 shots a hand. Typically, we don't start teaching theory or anything else until you have the endurance to do 1,000 shots a hand. And the reason for that is because if you don't have the endurance to train for the amount of time we need you to train, then you don't have the muscle mass to be able to really spend time with in the theory. So we really want you to have the endurance and to be able to have the right body mechanic and just throwing on the pelt before we ever let you go out and go crazy on the field. So that's the reason why we teach mostly pelling and shot mechanics at our private practices. And at practice, we teach a lot of that for those of you who watch the live streams. So that is the essential gist of all of it. Any questions on that part? Nope. Okay. So if you're wondering what this is, it's a Century bag. Wave Master also makes it. Go to Facebook Marketplace. You'll find it for $100, $150 used, only by used. Get one of those, fill it up with a little bit of water, a little bit of sand, and you're good to go. Stop using the pels that are wooden or metal or anything else that have carpet around them and all that shit. That's the reason why you have tendonitis in your elbow, is because there is a reverberation when you hit. It is quite awful. This is solidly hitting, just like you're hitting a bag of a soft person. It would be like if we hit it without any armor on. So it definitely helps with that. It also gives you the body width that most average people are, which is what we do. All of our training towards is an average person. So, do you want a handout? Okay. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm going to end it a little bit early. If you have any questions or anything else, feel free to reach out to me. As always, duchessantigone@gmail.com, or you can ping me on Facebook. Thank you so much for joining me.